We have indeed. How cool is that? Look who's just popped out right in front of us. So we were following leopard tracks, and as I'm looking down on the road, Fergus says, no, there's a leopard in front of you. And so there is Mr. T himself that has just popped out of Little Gowrie and is crossing northwards onto Djuma, which is absolutely fantastic. He has got a bit of a limp on him at the moment, so he's looking a bit battered, but that is okay. He'll, I'm sure, be absolutely fine. It's not the worst limp I've ever seen. In fact, it's much better than we've seen from even the likes of Shadow, who's far better these days. So he'll recover from that, no doubt. Why he's got a limp, I'm not quite sure. We know that Tingana does often go after big prey items, and so it could be from that. Also, with all these new male leopards that are around on the western side, he could have had a bit of an interaction with one of them. And, well, you know, it's a hard life being a male leopard. Sometimes you get a situation where you do get into a fight and you get a little injury here and there. But you can see he's marking heavily. So he's marking all over the sides of the road, brushing his face into the bushes with that gland, spraying his urine as he lifts his tail. So he's making a statement that this is my area, and it's the first time I've seen Tingana on this side in quite some time, and so I'm glad to see that he's here. The reason why I'm glad to see that he's here is because if he's doing this, he is protecting this area and keeping Tandi's little cubs safe. At the end of the day, we know that that cub is going to rely heavily on Tingana's influence over the next little bit. Now, as we drive past this bush, it's just this big waft of popcorn as we go past. I love that smell. Whenever you smell it, you know that you are not far from a leopard, and so I'm super glad that we've managed to catch up with Tingana. What a stroke of luck. It was just completely by fluke that he just crossed out in front of us. Like I say, we were still busy with lion tracks, and we were following those around, and they most definitely are chasing the buffalo, and they went into Little Gowrie, it looks like. What is that over there? Hold on, I might have just seen something else. I just want to have a little look. No, it's just a stump, don't worry, Ferg. Sorry, there was just a light-coloured thing lying there, so I thought for a second maybe our lions weren't actually too far. Now, what I'm going to try and do is just position myself a little bit better, but it's going to be a bit close to go that way, so I'm going to go around quickly. So, for those of you that don't know who Tingana is and who Tandi is and why I'm talking about all of these things, well, Tingana is our dominant male leopard. He is the leopard that has been in charge of this area over the last few years, and he really kind of has taken control over this section. Lately, though, he's been getting pushed by a couple of other individuals and a couple of other leopards that are moving in and young males, and so he's had a tough time of it. But he's recently fathered a cub with a female called Tandi, and we're super excited. We've had one brief glimpse of that little cub. It has just kind of shown itself with Tandi, and it was a situation where, because it's still very small, we've had to close the den area and keep it safe from that section and make sure that nobody's kind of getting too much pressure on that little one. So that's why we ended up leaving it, and why we ended up in a situation where we haven't been going back to the den just yet. We will start opening that den fairly shortly as the cub gets a little bit older, and so we'll have a situation where we hopefully will have a long period of seeing that cub, and that's going to be very heavily reliant on Tingana staying in this area and keeping this area as his own. But you can see he's still limping a bit. Like I say, that limp will be okay. At the end of the day, we'll have a situation where he'll probably be just fine. But there we go. He's just going up the road and moving northwards towards, well, deeper into Djuma, which is fantastic news for us. Hopefully it means that he's going to be still here. Right, now I'm going to carry on following him. While I do that, I think we're going all the way back up to the Mara. I'm not sure who with, though. Indeed, so Tingana is still just moving straight northwards. He seems to be on a serious mission. So at this stage, I feel like he's just proving a point. He's coming out and he's starting to mark. At the end of the day, he doesn't want to be complacent in any way. He wants to be able to try and make sure that he's sending a message to any of these newbies that he is the dominant male. He is the one that is in charge of what is going on. And so as he goes, he's marking on almost every bush that he goes past. And he seems to have his nose down on the ground, as well as though he's picked up the scent of something, and he's going with that as he moves around. The thing is, though, is he's probably a little hungry as well, because he seems to be getting a bit distracted every now and then. If there's a movement around him, he stops and he listens and he looks. You can see there's a little bit of marking as well, spraying, tail up, and it's pretty much on every bush that overhangs near the edge of the road he kind of goes to and does it. So it's interesting kind of behavior, and like I say, it's been a long time since Tingana has been this side and has actually marked in these these areas that we know of. Also, at the end of the day, we have had a lot of rain, and so he needs to go now after the rain and just re-establish his scent boundaries as he goes along. Toby, who's 15 years old, you're wondering if Tingana is fighting with these new male leopards that have been appearing. Well, it's possible, Toby. The thing is he doesn't have any cuts that I can see, or scrapes or scars or markings that would suggest that he's been in a fight. It looks more just like a little leg injury from maybe something like trying to tackle a large prey animal, or maybe potentially not coming out of a tree correctly or something like that. That's what it kind of looks like at the moment. It doesn't look like he's been in a situation where he's actually got bitten by something or clawed or anything like that. Now, there are a number of vehicles with us, so we need to be polite and let them through. I hope there's enough space for them. But so I think it's more a situation that he's in where he's basically at the moment is probably just been injured by something other than fighting, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has had one or two altercations or trying to kind of just establish what's going on. Now, maybe he's picked up the scent now, and that's why he's on such a scent marking patrol and mission at the moment. So interesting to see how it goes. I'm not 100% sure whether or not he has come into contact with those new males. He seems to be spending less and less time to the west of us in Arathusa and those areas, and more to the east. And so, like I say, I'm not 100% sure whether or not he is going to be in a situation where he's met up with them yet. I would imagine, though, he's not going to be very happy about having them around at all. Right, so that's the two vehicles past us. Michael, no, so this is not the most pressure he's seen since he's been dominant. Remember, when he was a young male, he would have been pressured heavily, and even when he was trying to forge a territory of his own. But sort of midway through his dominant lifespan, if you want to call it, Tingana was completely pushed out by Anderson. So Tingana originally was not dominant in this area. He never used to come this far west. Mvula used to be all in this particular section, and prior to Mvula, the Jordan male, he was also around here. And so you had a situation where he kind of got pushed by Anderson. So he's relocated once before, and this is what happens with male leopards, is as new males come that are stronger, so it kind of pushes them and they move, and there's quite a lot of sort of play in their territories, if you so to speak. They don't hold an exact territory all the way through their dominant lifespan. They will move and kind of change up as they go along. So he has been pushed already, and this is just part and parcel, and he is starting to get older, and so younger males are going to start challenging. At the end of the day, it is a prime real estate, lots of females, and so he's going to have a tough time of it. Right, we're going to catch up with these other cars and with Tingana again, and try and worm our way back to the front. And while we do that, let's go across to Mr. Henry and find out where he's off to and what luck he's had this morning. Tingana has now decided it's time to have a bit of a rest, although he kind of every now and then pops his head up and just has a little bit of a look around. But you can see, there we go, back down again. I think he's obviously had a long night of moving around, because he was walking and then all of a sudden he just decided to flop down and has been in that position now for the last, I'd say, 10-15 minutes, and he hasn't really moved at all. So I think he's found his little resting place for the day. I don't think he's going to go too much further than where he is right now. The thing is that it's interesting, because the interesting part about it was that he was just moving, and all of a sudden he just flopped down on his side, and that was the end of it. So I don't know why. Maybe, like I say, he's been moving all morning and we just caught him at the end. So, William, I mean, who's all the way from Oregon, I'm not sure. He could be sending a message. I somehow think this has got nothing to do with Hosanna, but more to do with this unknown male that was seen here a few days ago mating with the Ingrid Dam young female. This is an area where they were. So they came from the west, moved past Treehouse Dam, up to Philemon's Dip, and then back that way. And so this is an area where that male would have walked. And so I think it's more that than anything else. I think Hosanna is not that much of a threat. We know Tingana was with Hosanna 2 days ago or 3 days ago. And there was no fighting or anything like that. He was just watching Shadow and Hosana from the distance and didn't really seem too perturbed by them. So I don't think it's Hosana. I think he still knows that he's much bigger than Hosana and that he can dominate Hosana. But when there's new big males that are mating, that is a major threat to him. And that's probably what's fueling him to start coming this way. At the end of the day, where he is now is not out of his range. When I first started here at Djuma, this was well within Tingana's area, and we used to see him a lot around the Treehouse Dam, Shibamo area, and it's only recently that he's been kind of shying away from this section and spending more time to the east and the south. Now, there could be two reasons for that. One might be the fact that Shadow and Cub have moved further to the east and are spending a lot more time around the Mulawati section of Little Gowrie. Tundi has also moved to the Mulawati section of Djuma, and so his two offspring that he's currently kind of overseeing, and even though he doesn't play any part in actually fathering those two offspring, he still needs to keep a territory safe, and he knows that he'll have offspring in this area, and so maybe that's causing him just to shift slightly and to protect that section to make sure that both of those offspring are surviving. So it could be also part of it. It's an interesting thing either way. The dynamics here at the moment are really amazing. White Lady, you're saying that we've seen Hosana scent marking lately. Is he doing it in a serious way? Well, I don't really know if he can rationalize being serious or not. At the end of the day, he's marking, and that instinct to start carving out a piece of area that he needs to protect from others is started, and he's definitely lifting his tail and spraying, much like what we saw Tingana do this morning. I haven't as yet seen him mark with his face, so we saw Tingana just now jumping up into the bush and kind of wiping his face onto the leaves and things. I haven't seen Hosana do that yet, and I haven't seen him also scrape his back legs while urinating just yet, but the instinct is there, and so I suppose, yes, it is serious. He is doing it to try and kind of leave a chemical signature. There's no other reason why he would be spraying up against a tree. Remember, when he was a cub, he would have gone and just squatted on a piece of grass somewhere. It wouldn't have really mattered. Now he's purposely going to iconic landmarks on the edges of areas that he's walking, so a big leadwood, let's say, or a big tree that's right next to the road. He's going to that, and he's then lifting his tail and spraying. So that's a definite chemical signature mark that he's leaving, and so he, I suppose, is being serious about it. I think for now, though, Tingana still kind of sees him as a smallish male and knows that he's in no way a threat for now. But these new males coming in could trigger Tingana to get much more amped up, and that might mean that he pushes Hosana a little bit more. Tony, you're wondering if a male would retire himself to avoid himself being overthrown. Well, no, not really. I mean, no male at the end of the day wants to lose area where he knows there's food, water, potential mating rights. The instinct for any of these animals out here is to mate as long as they can, to keep as best territory as possible, and to have access to food and water. So giving that up voluntarily is not ideal. What you will find, though, and Mvula is a prime example of this, is that some males are very, very clever in that they know that their chance of survival means that they have to stop being territorial, and they have to stop marking and calling and kind of just fly under the radar, otherwise they're going to be killed. And so Mvula's done that very, very cleverly. I suppose in a way he has given up territory in order to survive, and so he's now become this nomadic individual that kind of just moves around. And as the big boys like Tingana and Anderson and all these newer males are around, so Mvula just kind of ghosts between them and keeps himself quiet. Now he's all of a sudden just kind of piqued his interest. Something has piqued his interest. I don't know what it is. He's looking in the direction of where we heard those elephants earlier this morning when we first found those lion tracks, and I wonder if maybe he's picked up some sort of indication of something moving around. It will be interesting to know. I'm just looking up the road. We're quite close to a road at the moment, so I was looking up the road just to see if anything was potentially crossing, but it doesn't seem like it. Tingy, you're looking very serious today, boy. I suppose it's all about business this morning, marking territory and making sure he imposes himself. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful. So if you ever wanted to know the spot pattern for Tingana, there you go. You can see that he's got 5 spots on the right side of his muzzle. And so the spots that we use, for those of you that have ever asked about spot patterns, are those little spots that just sit above the whisker line. So there's the whiskers that kind of have those black bars. And so Shamson, you were wondering about the spot pattern. So you can see you've got whiskers that come out of those kind of black lines that run along his muzzle, and then just above that there are spots. Now there's 2 spots close together that go up towards his eyes, and then there's 1, 2 next to that, and then 1 little spot on top of those 4 where the fly is. So there's the 5th spot on top. So that makes 5 on his right side, and then on his left would be a different set of spots. And that's how we use spot patterns when we talk about them, and we say, let's say it's a 3-3 male or a 5-3 male. It's because we're talking about those little spots, those IDing features just above the whiskers that are unique on every leopard. So even though you might have a leopard that will be a 3-3, the arrangement of those spots is going to be very different, and so you can always use them as a reliable way of determining whether or not they are different individuals. The other things that we will use is around the sort of eye area, and you can see that fly is super interesting. Let's see if it goes down towards, there we go. I thought it might happen. I was wondering if it would get any further, because it was kind of going where the whiskers are, and the whiskers are very sensitive, so they would have picked up the vibration of that fly moving. Had the fly come round the front of the whiskers, you might find that it would have got towards his mouth and would have been able to go to where it wanted to go, which is along the lip line and the gum line. And the reason for that is because those flies are looking for moisture within the lip line and to sequester the moisture from Tingana himself. Right, we're going to sit with him a while longer, see if he does stir. I don't think he will, but if he does, we will be here to surely catch it. And while we do that, I believe Scotty D is still on his walk, and I think he's got something that might take off it. Well, indeed, I think Tingana doesn't really care, though, at the moment. The flies are all over his muzzle and they're on his ears, but you can see every now he flicks them. But that's part and parcel of being a leopard and having these kind of issues, but he seems to be super relaxed. In fact, that's the first time he's lifted his head since you last were with us, which is quite nice. The thing about, and the reason why we're sitting here, even though he's very fast asleep, is that the conditions today are overcast, they're grey, they're cloudy, and the chance of him getting up and moving is quite real. At the end of the day, Tingana, we know, is a cat that does move around a lot, and so even though he seems quite sleepy, anything could wake him up at any point, and so it's worth just sitting around with him. We often don't get long sightings with him unless he's on a kill, and so if we get a chance just to spend a bit of time, we might as well. But he is very sleepy and he is taking it very easy at this stage, and he's found himself a rather nice little spot. He's quite well kind of protected here. He's got sort of vegetation all around him and he camouflages incredibly well, so I think he's going to have a nice quiet day if he ends up staying where he is. You can see there's a nice sort of bank of grass behind him there, so he's quite well sort of tucked in underneath that tree. It'll be nice and shady if the sun does break out, and so perfect little place for a leopard to have a really good nap. Now I'm quite happy for Scott that he found the snake. I know Scott loves the snakes, and I was actually just thinking about them this morning as to why we haven't seen too many. Now trying to see, I thought I saw a cuckoo, but it's actually not. It was just a starling, so I was going to ask Ferg to go and show the cuckoo, but in the meantime we'll just stay on. So, Fairy Poople Snoot, you want to know how big Tingana's area is? It's difficult to say. I mean, it's an ever-changing situation, and their territories do sort of expand and contract as competition comes in and out. Currently, I would say that his movement, from what we've seen over the last few months, is he's probably accessing at the moment, I would say, about 3,000 to 4,000 hectares, so 6,000 to 8,000 acres roughly. That's about as much as he's moving around in at the moment. It's slightly smaller than it used to be. He used to go all the way into Arathusa, Simbambili, a little bit into Elephant Plains, and then he would go down into Hoffman's, Ilgari, Chitwa, Cheetah Plains, even a bit into Mala Mala, north into Buffelshoek, Torchwood, all of those areas, whereas now he seems to be kind of restricted to the Buffelshoek, Torchwood a little bit because quarantine's there, Chitwa, Little Gowrie, Vessels, those kind of areas. So he's kind of got a much more narrow band that runs north-south. Anyway, while we kind of watch him groom away and see if he's going to start maybe getting up, sometimes when they groom like this, it could be a good indication. Let's go back across to James Henry, who I think is around Chitwa somewhere, and maybe he's got some sort of sign of something interesting to show all of you. Well, peaceful is about right. He's not stirred an absolute inch since we last saw him. He's been sleepy, but the sun is out, and maybe that will drive him to be frolicking around like those playful ellies that Scott has just had. And I'm always jealous when the guys on foot get to see ellies, because being with an elephant herd on foot has got to be one of the most spectacular things to do in life. It is single-handedly one of my most favorite experiences, and some of my best ever walks have been with ellies around. So I'm a bit jealous of Scott, but at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure Scott would be a bit jealous of us being with a little spotted cat this morning. Not that he's little as well, he's a rather large individual, but I think he's found, like I say, his little spot for the day, although he is in full sunshine. So as that sun is now breaking through the clouds, there is no shade whatsoever where he's lying. So the sun breaking out might actually start to make him stir a little bit. He might then get up and move into a bit of a shadier section. We'll hopefully see how that pans out, but it definitely might mean that we get at least some sort of movement from him. Ferg and I were just talking if maybe it's time to start heading off and seeing what else we can go and find, given that we haven't really gotten too much from him. But you can see, even though he's under a bush, the angle of the sun at the moment means that he is going to be completely obliterated if the sun gets warm. So I don't think he's going to be down there for too much longer. I have a feeling he's going to maybe just meander off into some shade. I don't know where he's going to head from here. He seemed to be on a kind of mission going straight north. I thought for a second he might cut towards Treehouse Dam, but he's already gone way past that. So maybe up towards Gowrie Dam for this afternoon. Who knows? There we go, a few feet and tail stirs. It might mean that the sun is starting to kind of catch his attention. When you see a little bit of stretching and the tail flickered a little bit there, that it could potentially mean that he's going to get up and move. It would be nice if he did move again. It feels as though he was, kind of over too quickly this morning, and the cheetahs are outshining him somewhat in their activity. So hopefully we will see some sort of movement from Tingana at some point during the day today. Christy, most certainly, if male leopards move into a different male's territory, then they will kill the offspring of that male leopard. So if, let's hypothetically say, this new male moves in, Tingana gets chased out, then Tandi's cub is in very, very serious danger from that new male, because ultimately he will want to mate with Tandi, and therefore he will kill that cub to bring her back into an estrus cycle that will allow him to be able to mate with her. So we don't really want to take over at this stage. We want Tingy to try and stay as dominant as possible for the next little bit, and hopefully he will be able to hold out for a year or so and give time for that cub to be able to get to a sort of much bigger age where it will be able to fend for itself. The thing is that it's not just obviously a male leopard that's a big problem. Is Tandi's got a number of concerns on her hand at the moment. She's got lions, she's got hyenas. That little cub is not mobile enough yet to be climbing trees, and it's really at the most dangerous point at the moment. Is she's trying to keep this little one out of the way of all of these others. Oh, there's a little bit of mouth movement. What are you doing, Tingana? Are you chewing a branch? Looks like it, doesn't it? It looks like he's got a branch in his face that he's busy chewing. Are you reclining, boy? Has it been a tough day so far? But you can see his teeth are still healthy, so he's still in good condition. It's not like his teeth are blunted in any way, or his claws. So he's still got, I reckon he's still got time left in him. Of course, it just depends on what comes along. If there's a bigger, stronger competitor, then obviously it makes it harder. But we really do need him to stick around, because it would be great for him to be around here and just to look after this area, and for us not to have to worry about the male leopard side of things, so that Tandi can really focus on keeping a little one safe from hyenas and lions and other things. Right. Well, I think think Tingana is still very sleepy. We're probably going to sit here for a few more minutes just to see if the sun does wake him up. And while we do that, let's go back across to Brent Leo Smith with some rather active spotty cats.